Thank you, Trevor, for joining me on my coffee break. I am drinking a black coffee. Do you have anything this time around?
Sorry, mate. I'm having a cup of tea. I'm an English gentleman. I do like my coffee. It gets me through the workday, and I like it as a nice treat. But often I drink tea, so I'm just drinking a cup of Earl Grey.
If I recall correctly, you used to paint miniatures. Was that just Warhammer Fantasy, or were there other games that you painted?
Yeah, good question. So when I was young, I stumbled across a strange store in my city. I'm trying to recall what it was called. Um, it wasn't a Games Workshop store. It was another fantasy store, but they stocked what was the early precursor Warhammer models. I think it was Citadel, basically. So basically, I stumbled in there and I bought some miniatures just because, purely because they caught my interest, purely because I was like, oh, these look nice. I think I might be able to do something nice with these. Elven wolves, which I really liked, and some like early beastmen. That's fundamentally what got me into painting miniatures. As life evolved and things progressed, and I got more into the game and more into the format and stuff. I've had different armies. My favorite army is Skavens. It's the rats. I do have a penchant for like Wood Elves, and I've also dabbled with 40k Space Marines.
So you didn't branch into War Machine or any other game?
No, I've tried a few. I'm trying to recall what it was. I mean, I'm also was also massively into Dungeons and Dragons. We tried some different games amongst my friends, like Blood Bowl is one. Um, I forget what the other one's called. It's like a sort of dystopian future game. It's a dice game. It's a model game. I've tried a few things. Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any favorites that you've painted?
Yeah, certainly. By the time I got to like later life, I was immensely proud of my Skaven army because you wake up one day and you have a vision and you think, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to paint this regiment this style and I'm going to paint this character this way and etc. etc. And then as you grow and you develop and you evolve and you get new ideas, then you repaint and then you like so I ultimately had like a lot of satisfaction about my Skaven army.
What color scheme did you use for your Skaven army?
Um, well, I mean it's a bit stereotypical. I mean they were very dirty, they really were, but I think that's it's counterproductive. I actually keep rats, and sadly, I've got one today that's really not very well, which has kind of got me in a bit of a downer. And they're actually really clean, lovely beasts, the lovely beasts. But in the fantasy world, it's a different thing. What you're trying to depict is a completely different narrative than what reality is, if that makes sense.
Did you answer what color scheme you used for your rats?
My Skavens, yeah, I mean it's basically a dirty palette, so any dirty colours you can think of, so like browns, greys, Confederate, these kind of things. What I found was really interesting. I mean, they've I don't know how involved you are with the law and stuff. There's a clan called Clan Eshin. There's four different distinct clans. Well, one is Clan Eshin, and they're basically the ninja stealth assassins of the Skaven world, and they basically are paid money to knock off the political opponents of the warring warlords and scheming people. And what I did was like look at it and like very stereotypically, it's like okay, they're all black, the black ninjas, that's a given. But I flipped it on its head and I was like, well, actually, I don't want to go that way. I'm going to make mine white or cream or ivory, and certainly the generals anyway. But it's interesting how cultures look at colours and their meaning. So, for example, in our culture, black is death, and white is virtue and light. But if you go to Egyptian culture, the reverse is true. So I tried to inject a bit of that and kind of flip the script and make it a little bit different, a little bit more unique. I mean, if you're a scurrying ninja rat and you want to kill someone in an alley, of course you're going to be wearing black. But if you're like a noble ninja rat, well, noble. If you're a ninja rat of some repute, you might not wear that kind of clothing.
Do you still have your Skaven army?
No, to be honest with you, with life circumstances and stuff, I kind of slowly sold it off and sold it off and sold it off.
You don't have any of your minis anymore?
A handful in a drawer that I keep in my drawer these days. Yeah.
What are those handfuls?
I've got a couple of elven figures. I've got a couple of like 40k Space Marines that I converted and did like odd weird things to.
Okay, you piqued my interest. What are odd weird things?
I really like Games Workshop. I do. I don't fully endorse the canon and the here is how you must paint a regiment and here's you must do this. So 40k universe. There's X amount of genomes. If you're this chapter, you've got to be green. If you're this chapter, you've got to be blue, like Ultramarines or whatever. If you're this chapter, you've got to be this. And I don't really buy into that. What I found frustrating about that was like, what if I want to do something different? So I'm going to put something out there that you might not really agree with, but I predominantly had a black painted Space Marine army. I mean, one, because it's easy to paint, but if you do it fine, I mean, if you concentrate on the detailing, it's actually really crisp and nice. And another thing I did was to play with different concepts and different things and different insignia and make them very unique. So, for example, within my Space Marine army, which is supposed to be a very masculine army and very brutal army, my scouts were all females that were sourced from an entirely different company. I think they're called something sex bots, and they were absolutely fantastic miniatures. And that I could buy into. That I was like, yeah, I'll get behind this. And I'm like, this is brilliant. Another thing I did, and this is going to sound ridiculous, in insignia and what it means and stuff, I put some like Hello Kitty like motifs on the shoulders and stuff. And what was nice is that you had a contrast from the complete masculine and feminine. I mean, it's just my own weird interpretation.
That sounds awesome.
Really? Think so?
I know there are people who are diehard gatekeepers who will be like, that's not, that doesn't follow what I think the law should be, so it's not standard. But the law of 40k has changed so much. Like in the beginning, Horus was just a general. He wasn't related to the Primarch at all.
So when I was young, I had Skaven army, and it was back in the sort of 90s, and Games Workshop was a very different beast than it is today. Bless them, they've evolved, and etc. Not always in the best ways, but best of luck. So basically, I brought in a weird mackled toy, and I was really wounded. I was upset a little bit. Basically, I got some parts from some figures, and I bought like a really cheap toy that you might get for your cat, and I mackled it together to kind of make this fantastical beast for my Skaven army. And I remember the guy in the Games Workshop saying, "That looks like the ugliest mantelpiece object I've ever seen." But what I was thinking was like, well, no, I'm just trying to be a little bit creative. I'm trying to just sort of flip this. I'm trying to bring something new to the game to the table. It didn't stop me.
If it brought you joy to make your minis, then no one has the right to harsh on your joy, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Amen, but amen.
Have you thought about getting back into painting minis at all?
I have. I mean, in my later life, I'd when I was 31, I had psychosis, which is another topic altogether. But part of my rehabilitation and sort of getting myself better and fixing myself was getting back into minis, which I did for a little while. And it's funny to think because I actually kept my paints in a little green first aid box, which was kind of nice. And it was therapeutic and gave me something to concentrate on and like put the worries of my life to one side.
But you currently don't. At this point in this calendar year, you haven't done any painting though, right?
No, exactly. And currently where I'm at right now, in this juncture in my life right now, no, I'm not doing anything creative in that kind of field.
Didn't we meet in a creative role play on a website a few years ago?
We did, absolutely.
So you're not even doing that then?
No, not really. I mean, the platform we're on, it's changed a little bit. Um, there aren't the people that used to be there. Um, yeah, no, I mean, I think what you're kind of pointing at is like, hey, Trev, you need to get back into doing something creative again. And you're absolutely right. I do.
Anyways, my coffee's done, so I'm gonna get back to editing videos. Thank you for joining me.
Jake, a pleasure. Thank you.